G'day, guys. Welcome to another Hash It Out. Obviously, once again in crypto, there's never a uncertain time here. For us, it's the difficulty sort of adjustment that is the hot topic at the moment in the industry. So let's have a bit of a discussion on that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about the EIP-37, and I'll see where the conversation goes.
sure. So we needed testing and data to make some changes. We spec'd out EIP 37, which compresses the epic length down to 128 blocks. It puts on basically a 50% cap in terms of hash rate movement in that period of time. And so we've created the implementation and we've put it out for public review.
Yep.
That's where we are at this point. So what that means is the entire core team is going to pick through the code line by line, make sure everything looks good. There's a couple people that are already running it as kind of like a private test net. Make sure that everything is as it should be. And once things are cleared in that process, then it goes to the community to vote. It's the miners that are in charge. So they'll have the ability to support pools that support the reference client that they choose to mine. And we go from there.
Yeah, I've had a couple of questions just around the voting. So you want to explain sort of what that process is and how that looks for both solo miners, but then also pool miners?
Sure. This is not a Discord vote. This is not a Twitter poll. This is block-based voting. And so what that means is that it actually accumulates based on the blocks that hit within a voting period and what reference client those blocks were essentially supporting. So a miner that's a solo miner is going to want to spin up a node version that supports their vote. Miners out there want to, keep a heads up in terms of what pool is supporting what, and direct your hash rate. So there's a little bit of luck involved, right? That's always the case in mining when it comes to hitting blocks. So I recommend that everybody, whether they're solo mining or mining the whatever pool, just make sure that they're running the reference client that supports what you want.
Yeah, and I know on previous, like for example with Node 5.0, that was like an auto support. Is this also something like that, or is this a manually configured yes or no?
I actually don't think that part has been built yet. That'll be the last thing that we plug in after testing is the node part. So currently it's kind of hasn't been fully packaged yet. Once it's pulled in, we'll figure out whether we're going to do auto vote or not, and then we'll let everybody know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, having that clear transparency and communications key, whether that's sort of built into the node itself or the config file, yet to be decided.
Yeah, my thinking is in that situation, I usually lean towards auto vote, because if you don't want to vote for it, you don't change anything.
Yeah.
Right. That's simpler, in my opinion, rather than going in and configuring it yes or no.
Yeah, it's a little bit it's like a small quality of life thing for you just have to update. You don't have to change anything. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, so just to recap that, so a mining pool will run a specific reference client. That'll be either a yes vote or a no vote, and then you just direct your hash rate to each mining pool that sort of wants to or will reflect the vote that you want to cast. So you do vote with your hash rate, just to reiterate.
Yep. Your hash rate supports blocks and blocks cast votes. That's the simplest.
Yeah, I think it's a good time for miners to organize with each other and also for their mining pool operators. If you want EIP-37 to pass, talk to the community members that you're mining with, so that they can, make sure that they've updated to the proper client. And if you don't want it, most of the conversation I've seen is that it's almost unanimous that miners want this update, but maybe there are some that don't.
No, I talked to the pools, and they're frustrated with the slower block times. So I imagine that's not going to be something that they're going to
Yeah.
have any issue with, because that's their revenue model is based on predictable number of blocks per day, and the difficulty being off interferes with that. So I mean, they're in the same position as miners, where their rewards are based on blocks, and when blocks are slow, their rewards go down. So the reality is that I think at least most of the big pools will probably support it, just thinking from that perspective. I know Giblock definitely is going to try to get their miners representation, which I personally, think is just better service. I'm sure some will run polls, some will, just do it anyway. It depends on the pool. But keep a heads up with that, because, even if you're against it, your vote should matter. You're part of the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to drive home also, is a lot of people are sort of new into the ecosystem who may have necessarily heard of Ergo before, but not so much the governance side of things. I think this will be a nice introduction, and a clear introduction of the voting power that the miners have on the protocol.
Yeah, and so looking at timelines on all this stuff, because voting is based on epochs. When should we expect this vote to take place, I guess? With the hope that this new reference client is out in the next, let's say, week.
Yeah.
Days,
so one thing that is controversial, potentially, I don't know, haven't heard negative reactions yet, but one thing that we did tweak a little bit here that, I think is important to be very transparent about, is generally the voting period is 1,024 blocks. We did make a choice to compress that down to 512. The thinking was, okay, the consensus number at that point is 460, meaning if 460 blocks vote yes, then, it's going to pass. Going smaller than that, which potentially we could have done like 256 or 128, that would kind of skew things away from solo miners, right? So we want the solo miners on our network to have a word. It's not as convenient, but democracy is not convenient. Voting is not convenient. It's much easier to have one strong man in the front that says this is what we're doing. And it's interesting how, I don't know, it's interesting and somewhat sad to me that we do have some voices in the community that are like, devs, do something, just take control of the network. And that's not Ergo, right? It's just not. So, we'll put it to a vote. We did compress it. Some people might not like that. I think the majority will understand that, at least.
So is that a change in the upcoming node version?
Yeah, it's a specific change for this vote, that it will kind of track that every 128 blocks, and then after, if we roll over 460, it'll be seen as passed. And hard forks are messy, right? There's a lot of people out there that don't really understand what that means. Okay.
A lot of things have to go on in the back end to sort of lead up to all this.
There's a reason why, as an ecosystem, we really avoid it. And that is because you lose backwards compatibility, number one. But what that means in a practical sense is that every wallet, every exchange, every mining pool needs to pretty much be in position to update once we roll to the block of the fork. And that takes a lot of organization. So, on the back end, we're going to be scrambling. Like, there's no other way. There's no other word to put it. There's going to have to be open, clear comms. I was talking with CW earlier today about getting some of the Sigmanauts involved in terms of making sure that we have communication, because the reality is a lot of the times hard forks are planned well in advance, right? Where they're like, okay, we're gonna hard fork on this date, a month out, and there's a lot of comms that occur in the back end to make sure that that process is smooth. Now, on the user side, if you're running a full node wallet, you need to update that, right? You're no longer running a reference client that's supporting the network at that point. And the same is true for Ergo users, right? If you're running Ergo, if that fork is initiated, you need to update your thing, because you may have an old reference client and one guy running a GPU somewhere that's securing the chain that the majority of the hash rate is not pointed to, and strange things can happen. So generally, what we'll recommend probably is going to be a period where exchanges lock, approaching that block, and I think my consideration is, being that things are a little bit, I'm just gonna use the word hectic, right? We may want to have a relatively decent lock period, just to make sure that everything is up to date, and as things come back online, we open everything up and we move forward. But we have to see if we reach consensus yet. That's an unknown.
Yeah, that's a good point also. Reaching consensus is was a super majority, so greater than 90% of the hash rate voting in favor to pass the EIP-37. So obviously everything that has to go on the back end is all sort of subject to that pass.
Yeah, if it passes at like 460, I really hope that's not the 512th block.
It'd be a scramble, because just reading the PR, the commentary on here. So just on the activation, it's possible to activate EIP-37 after block 843,776 and before block 851,969. So for activation, like you mentioned, 460 blocks or more votes is required in the last 512, and it's checked every 128 blocks. And as soon as it hits that threshold, immediate activation. So it'll be a scramble.
Yeah, so we have to have things in position, and that's a consideration. I don't think a lot of people understand that, even are saying just fork the network. Now we still would have to do all that, right? Yeah. Now the devs in the Ergo ecosystem aren't going to do that. We need representation, right? This is a decentralized network. We've put the code out. We encourage miners to get in our GitHub. And, I think that one interesting thing we can do, especially since, we have a lot of eyes and potentially new users in and around our ecosystem, is do better in terms of educating how miners have not just voting power in terms of major changes to the chain, but you have on the fly adjustments. You can make blocks bigger or smaller. You can change transaction fees, which are very low, right? If we're in a situation where profitability is painful, that may be a wise place to look. Why not, see if you can raise the transaction fees and, support the miners, get them a little bit more profitable. I think that makes a lot of sense in this moment.
Just something I've been looking into in the last few days or so. I'm hoping to be putting together a little simulator tool for the upcoming ErgoHack that, I don't know shit about development, but Dimitri, who he works on the website and the Explorer and Sigmaverse with me, he and I are gonna try to put something together that it'll just be like a front end tool that you can input numbers and then simulate an epoch with things like the transaction fees and things like that. And I think that'll be a good way to educate miners on what they have control over, because right now it's all kind of arcane, like buried in the Scala docs and things like that. And I think the reality is people just don't know that they have control over those things, or how there's steps in place so that over a period of time you can increase a parameter by so much.
Yeah.
And that prevents, gaming of those parameters and things like that. It's pretty interesting, and yeah, education is definitely needed. So we'll see.
It'd be great to see those conversations between miners start to come to life, actually, because it shows that they're involved in the ecosystem and they're basically taking control of the chain and the ecosystem itself. Ultimately, it's all at their disposal. So there's a little bit of a write-up. If you want to head over to docs.ergoplatform.org, just go into the mining section. There's actually a governance section in there with a list of parameters and a couple other little sort of educational sort of paragraphs. So by all means, jump over there and check that one out. Yeah,
I'm sure we can get the link below.
Yeah,
right?
Quite simple, that one.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like a simple one, like Joe was just saying, increasing the transaction fees. At the moment, it's what is it, 0.001 of an erg. So what's that, about 2 cents, something along those lines?
Cheap.
So
cheap relative to most networks, right?
Yeah,
I think there's some business advantage to being cheap, right? But then there's also a balance in terms of profitability, and my hope is that over time, right? I don't see it coming tomorrow, but I hope over time our mining community gets more engaged in those type of governance parameters to where they set an economy, right? That's kind of what they have. They're the custodians of the Ergo network over a long enough period of time. So, they're going to need to learn to steward that and adapt. And, it kind of gets an interesting long-term trajectory. We could have one group that says we want big blocks and one that says we want small blocks. Let them vote, right? Yeah. You want higher fees, lower fees, let them vote. Let them talk. Let them track data. That type of engagement, the tools are there. And I think that over time, those tools are built for miner survival. That's what they're there for. You can adjust parameters to optimize the network to, not only promote growth on the network, but to, essentially get through hard times, which we're kind of there, right?
Yep. And it's basically just protecting their business model. Obviously, everyone's got incurred costs. It's a part of business, and it's just a matter of finding that balance, the equilibrium where a user's happy and the miner's happy for the service that's being paid for. So over time, that'll sort of come to light.
Yeah.
Something that I think would be good to address, something that I've seen miners on Telegram, Discord, Twitter. I've seen a lot of people saying that in the past they warned that this was going to happen or this could happen.
Sure.
Nothing was done, and people are frustrated by that.
Yeah. No, there's some miners out. There's some miners out there that have full privilege to dunk on the team for a while. That is what it is. Like there's no other way to put it. In going back, yes, hindsight's always 20/20. Were there concerns like internally in discussions? Absolutely. But it was one of those things as well where it was subject to market trends sometime, where things were in a different environment at the moment, and it's easy to kind of look at high tide and say, okay, well, there's where the rocks are. And then when the tide goes out, you're at a different, different situation. So, luckily, I do think we were able to roll this out so quickly because we had scoped out the problem. Like this was a discussion we had, and then it was like, okay, well, if what we have seems to pretty much be working in the current environment, are we going to push a fork, right? Because that is something that we've tried to avoid, right? I think the situation here, certainly puts it on the table, and miners are going to choose. So in hindsight, I wish there would have been more engagement on the GitHub side. Now, that's not to say that, I think there are some people in our ecosystem that have my full permission to give me shit for quite a while, right? And, the EF team as well. It is something that, I always was not super happy with, right? Because it comes down, in my opinion, to cost predictability, right?
Yeah.
When you get these long, epochs, it's hard to predict cost, and that interferes with miners' businesses in simple terms. Like, you can't predict revenue when you have too much variability. So it's something that I discussed with the team, and we had previously discussed, like, okay, well, if we are going to change this, what would we do? And so I think that's a part of why we were able to turn it over pretty quickly, because it was on the radar. It just wasn't the priority it should have been. And that's not something that we can change in terms of the past, but I certainly hope that we get more engagement moving forward, right?
Yeah, definitely. Very well put. Like, I've had conversations myself, just leading up to the merge, that on the miner call, that there was 20 something of us. We sort of touched on that a little bit, and obviously it's been a concern. It's been a known sort of issue. Well, I wouldn't say issue, but it's
no, it's a concern.
It's a concern, yeah. And
that rubber banding of block times, it creates, basically unpredictable costing. And how do you run a business in that environment? You struggle. That's always been my issue with it. But it did work relatively well in times of relative stability, right? We did have, I think it was the KuCoin listing was when it first really showed up. I think it was I think there was one time before that it showed up, but the KuCoin listing was probably the larger one because we had more eyes, where the price went crazy. And so, naturally the difficulty kind of adjusts as profitability rises. And then we got caught on a little mini difficulty bomb, nothing like the merge. That merge was
very different.
Yeah, that's like totally different scale, but there were some intelligent miners out there that picked it up and said, "Hey guys, we need to look at this," and we listen to them more. Like, there's no other way to put that. So I give them full permission to give me shit for as long as they need, right?
And I've seen some miners voice their concern that they think it's too late. The change is too late, and there's concern that the chain could stall as miners migrate away. I don't personally think that is going to happen. I think it could be a very long epoch, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
My thoughts, the first thing is, we're lucky that this occurred in an environment where basically nothing is profitable. That's the shitty blessing of a shitty situation, is that it happened at a time when mining as a whole, it's kind of on the ropes, right? There's not a lot of people out there that are making profit, even if they're fully optimized, and in terms of their hardware and their power cost is pretty much in the basement in terms of what they're able to create for themselves. It's still a hard time because there's basically so many miners out there. So it's one of those things where I think long term, it's better to sort this out now, while things are kind of in a painful situation.
If there was one coin that was very profitable right now, everybody would be there, and then
everyone would jump on the boat and it would go underwater.
Yeah.
I think actually that did happen. I don't remember what the coin was. I was talking to a miner and he said, "Oh, we had one for like a day, 2 days."
Yeah.
Then everybody figured it out and jumped on, and now that boat's underwater.
Yep.
And we're in a really unfortunate situation where, markets are basically what miners serve, right? And so, you can look at the amount of value that proof of work coins as a whole produce a day. That's kind of like the net market for miners. If they can mine within that and be profitable, their business model works really well.
Yeah.
Right now there's too many actors and there's not enough of a market to serve the number of actors that are available. And it is true that over time, miners do make markets, right? They do have the ability to mine and hold, and over time, it kind of changes the flow of kind of the economy on different chains, and so it'll find some equilibrium over time. Plus we also have some large actors potentially that would rent hash rate to get us through. There's a lot of things to consider there as well, because there's value on top of Ergo that I think people would protect. But I think there are some actually that have already been doing that just to support the network. Kind of renting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not an ideal situation. I mean, but at this point, what we can do is move forward.
That's it. Just grind it out and move forward slowly, and it's just a process. Unfortunately, we can't speed up time. It's just sort of that's up there at the mercy of at the moment, and we'll get through it. It's no dramas.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, my time is better spent trying to move forward than build a time machine and go back. Put myself up. And say, hey,
coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes that's life, unfortunately. All I can do is say, if you were one of the miners out there that really called it out, next time please get on GitHub, get on the forum, make a little bit more noise, and you have my permission to give me shit for as long as you need.
Yeah, exactly. And just on the profitability side of things, I was just looking on what to mine earlier, and even if you don't have any power costs associated with yourself, like or even you've paid off all your rigs, you've got no cost of business, basically, you're just fighting for pennies as it is. So I think the most profitable coin, I think it was only about 20 cents or so, thereabouts. So even if you've got no incurred costs whatsoever, that's basically your profit margin. So yeah, it's pretty rough at the moment. Yeah, that was just for one 3060. So everyday card. It's tough out there.
It is tough out there. This is a new environment. Like I know we talked about this in the past on this show, that it's kind of like a hard reset day one, right? Yeah. And I think that proof of work will certainly bounce back, right? But it's going to take time and it's going to take building. And so there are people out there that they just need to manage their risks, their costs, and look at their time horizons, because it's different. That we went through a period, probably I don't know, that maybe the 2 years before ETH merged, where GPUs were just printing.
Yeah, and I think that environment, a lot of people came into that, and that's all they've known as well. So they haven't had to venture out too far out of that sort of little Ethereum nest egg. There's a lot of projects out there that do offer innovation and sort of unique use cases to the industry. So it's just a matter of sort of people diving in, and this is sort of people, or from my perspective anyway, people should be doing a lot of the fundamental analysis and trying to sort of scope that out instead of sort of spec mining shitcoins and things like that, because ultimately this is where your value is found. Like you might hit it lucky on one of those sort of lesser known projects that might sort of pump and dump or something along those lines, but yeah, ultimately value is out there. It's just a matter of sort of that being realized.
Well, it's one of those things, okay, obviously you know what I'm mining, right? But if you didn't, right, if I were kind of freelance out there, I don't think I'm smart enough to outsmart or outrace that many competitors, right? Yeah. So then my choice would be either get to the sidelines and wait, or dig in and try to make my own value.
Yeah.
Right. And then generally I'm, more the second party, but
Yeah, what's interesting is I think as the secondhand GPU market floods and prices of GPUs come down, miners aren't even going to want to sell their hardware. Like if they can't make any money off of it, why bother selling? You're better off holding on to the hardware.
yeah.
And then, with that comes the potential for miners to come back in the future if there is better profitability. So thinking on a longer time horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's purely speculation, but I feel like there's reason to believe that in the future there will be more miners.
Yeah.
Sure.
I had a lot of discussions actually with miners who went through basically the last block top of 2017, 2018, and obviously profitability went through the floor then. And the ones who were really successful are the ones who didn't liquidate their hardware. They just kept it there for that rainy day, because obviously they believed things would turn around. And when it did, they had the other first ones there. They had their rigs set up, ready to rock and roll and jump straight on. Obviously, you start sort of mining coins, and we all know what happened with the availability of GPUs and how scarce they became. And obviously, in return, the price of those skyrocketed. So they were in a really good position because they had their rigs paid off and the other first ones to market by jumping on and having that availability sitting there. So, obviously, people would have entered the space at different time frames. So they'd have different incurred costs and things like that. But yeah, just sort of from my experience, if that was me, that's definitely one thing I'd be doing, is just sort of packing up your hardware, put in a closet somewhere, and just keep an eye on the markets, because things, in my opinion, it's inevitable for them when the markets do turn around and people can jump back in.
Yeah, I've talked to a couple of people in our ecosystem, that reached out and were like, "Listen, I have to shut off my rig because I just can't afford this." But I want to learn how to build. I want to learn how to develop. I want to engage and kind of do a different proof of work and kind of create my own lunch that when things turn around, I'm turning back on. So I really appreciate that. I think that shows a lot of initiative.
Yeah, we've spoken about it a couple of times as sort of personally. Anyways, like busy hands keeps you occupied. So obviously, a lot of things will be racing through your mind and things at different stages. But yeah, if you got your hands busy, you'll be sitting there punching away at the keyboard, learning coding or building websites or any sort of different sort of community work. By all means, jump in there, because there's numerous projects within the ecosystem, or even building your own value. It goes a long way to be able to create that value for yourself.
Yeah.
Seems like a fitting time for a nice ErgoHack shill.
It does.
We got it coming up in about a week now.
About a week, yeah.
So if you have any ideas, the theme is mining and minting. Doesn't have to be about mining or minting, but I think you'd be hard pressed to make a project on Ergo that it doesn't involve minting in some way. But anyway, there's a lot of great prizes, and we're partnered with Flux and Alephium and Jed Alliance. So yeah, if you've got ideas for mining tools or anything like that, get in there, and hopefully we can see some new tools and projects come out of it.
Yeah, and whatever your skill set is, you have something to offer. Like that's one thing that I think really needs to be stressed around ErgoHack is you don't have to be a dev. If you can make documentation, if you can make illustrations, if you can communicate well, there's a place for you in these type of events. It's not just dev specific. So feel free to reach out, and even as teams form and they come together, you can always hop on Discord and say, who needs help? Who needs,
Yep.
pull me in, coach. I'm sure there's projects out there that would love to have an extra set of hands.
Definitely. So just the dates around that one, the registrations close around the 3rd of October, runs to the 16th, and then voting shortly after that. But head over to ergohack.io for all the information and register over there. You can see the prize pools. It's pretty significant, this one, having the great partners there, like Noah just ran through. But also, you don't have to have a skill set in regards to developer specific. Noah mentioned earlier that he had an idea around creating that little epoch monitor and being able to change the parameters for the miners and have that little simulation. So just everything sparks from an idea, and he's grabbed someone who's interested to help him out. And yeah, it's perfect. I think that's a great little analogy and example of you don't have to be a developer. You can just have an idea and jump right in.
Yeah, I'll probably try to make some illustrations of what I have in mind. They're probably going to be crude, but it's okay. The point is to engage with the community and see what we can come up with, and if there happen to be some great projects that win, there usually are. But I think the most fun part of it is just to see people working together and helping each other out and making some cool stuff.
Yeah, I would agree.
We've seen some pretty cool projects coming out of it. Obviously being built out now, Excel being one. We've got stealth addresses just off the top of my head. I'm running through this. So
Night Owl coming out.
Night Owl, the casino, smart pools. There's numerous sort of things that add tremendous value that have come out of an ErgoHack.
Yeah, that's where GetBlock came from.
Yeah,
it's crazy to think about that.
So I think it's a good time for an ErgoHack.
We need some positivity.
It's been a busy, I don't even know how long ago the merge was, to be honest. I don't even know what day it is at this point.
That's all out the window for me. I've got no idea, to be honest.
It's point I've been on block time.
Yeah.
Where on the difficulty curve are we now?
Yeah, exactly. But we have the EIP in place. We have the devs that are going to do some review.
Yep.
We'll push that out, and so we have a path moving forward, right? And that's ultimately what I think is important. Is okay, we did have a problem, but we're in the process of delivering a solution, and we're gonna leave it to miners to decide, because ultimately this is their network and they should decide the path forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was your last words. We're sort of coming up to time now. Noah, do you have any sort of last words that you want to mention?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm not part of the Ergo Foundation. I saw some misunderstanding there. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy that likes Ergo, and I'm heavy into the community. But yeah, I'm not a foundation member. For anybody that had a misunderstanding there.
Yeah, cheers for that. I'd just like to say that there was a nice little tweet out here that was put out just earlier today from Crypto Herald, and it's basically along the lines of decentralization and what we've sort of been discussing today. It's just quoting, "It's easy to promote decentralization when everything goes well. It's not easy to stick to the core values of the project when difficulties arise. With all the pressure, it would have been easy to rush a centralized solution." So, yep, shadow to Ergo for staying true to the values. So, obviously, being decentralized, giving the miners their votes, giving them an opportunity to vote. By all means, if someone does have an idea in regards to EIP-37 and want to sort of create their own EIP, by all means, submit it and open up the discussion. So, I'd just like to end on that note.
Yeah.
Yep, well said.
All right, guys, it's been a pleasure chatting once again. Obviously, we'll see what happens with the voting as it sort of unfolds. Obviously, check into our social channels. We'll be as transparent as possible once the PR has been sort of reviewed and is put out to vote itself. So, just keep up to date with that one. So cheers, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure chatting once again.
Yep. See you next
Always.
time.
Take care. Have a good one.